Hey everyone, my name's Ilana if you don't know me. This is my second video on Accutane. It is also my second week on Accutane, but in this video you're gonna see my week 2, week 3, and week 4 check-ins. If you're interested about my first week on Accutane, including my history with acne and why I did go on Accutane and why it took me so long, I will have that linked down below and on the little card thing that I think is on this side, but it might be on this side. So definitely go check that one out. It's a week 1 diary and also just kind of an all-around series intro. Before you do that, why don't you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, all the fun YouTube things, you know, that I'm contractually obligated to ask you to do. And all that aside, let's jump right into it. This week was, for the most part, easier than last week. I've read a lot online about people whose symptoms don't show up until 2 months into treatment, and some people whose symptoms are present throughout the entire 6 months of treatment. It really seems like there is no one-size-fits-all or even one-size-fits-most when it comes to side effects for Accutane. I think I said symptoms earlier, I meant side effects. And I am certainly living proof of that. Like I talked about in my week 1 video, my side effects kicked in about halfway through my first week on treatment, and they kicked in fast. I pretty much immediately went through the purging stage, and my lips became very dry and chapped. If you hear crunching, my dog is eating a bone. My skin slowly started to become dry during that week, but that really didn't become as much of a problem until this week. This week, the purging stage has slowed down a bit. I am still getting new breakouts and new cysts, but not as heavily as I was those first couple of days. The chapped lips have also been calming down a little bit, but I think that's because of my own doing. I recently switched from a Burt's Bees chapstick to this, I feel like a beauty guru, to this Vaseline lip therapy. I have to admit, sticking my finger in a tub of chapstick feels really disgusting, and I truly hate every moment of it, but man, does that stuff work. So if you're on Accutane or you just have really dry lips, I really recommend it. I've been waking up with pretty dry, flaky skin, and as much as I wish I had the impulse control to not pick at it, I do not possess that kind of self-control. And one thing that I've noticed is almost every time I pick at a flake or a pimple or really anything, the skin underneath is incredibly raw. That's where a lot of the pain has been coming in, is when I don't listen to my own better judgment and I pick at my skin and it's raw and then it just burns for hours. So a lot of the pain can be controlled if you have more impulse control than I do. Something else I've noticed is that I'm getting kind of dry mouth pretty much, especially the corners of my mouth, and my lips do kind of stick together a lot. They're not chapped nearly as much anymore, but they are very tacky. I feel as though a lot of that could probably be combated if I were better hydrated, and I'm working on that. However, being well hydrated was never something that I was good at, and so it's a skill that I'm going to have to improve through self-discipline. I've also noticed that the rest of my body has dried out. And for my friends who have vulvas, yes, that too. The biggest downfall to dryness is itchiness. A lot of times, stuff gets itchy. I haven't figured out a way to combat that one yet. If you have any ideas, let me know, because I've also noticed that my hair and scalp have been drying out a little bit. I don't know how much you can tell, my hair is kind of frizzy and wiry going on, and I do already have pretty bad dandruff, and it has been getting worse, but none of what I've been going through has been even close to unbearable. The purging was by far the worst out of anything that I was going through, and that seems to be slowing down, which is quite nice. But other than that, it's more than a mild inconvenience, but it's really not super troublesome. It's not day ruining or week ruining or life ruining, and I'm still in the boat of, if my skin is clear by the end of this, it will have been worth it. That's about all that I've got for this week 2 check-in, and I will see you next week. 3 weeks on Accutane? Check. I'd say this week hasn't been hugely different from last week. The dryness has continued. My skin, I'd say, is a little less flaky, but I don't know if that has to do with time going on or just me taking better care of it. I do have to be really on top of my skincare, especially when it comes to chapstick and moisturizing. If I skip chapstick for like more than a couple of hours, Ooh, I'm in Spain without the S. My lips are probably looking very red and inflamed right now because I did forget chapstick for a couple of hours. I went out and I forgot to bring chapstick with me. Rookie move, I know. So they are definitely not comfy right now. Same goes for like if I wash my face or remove my makeup and don't put moisturizer on immediately after, I definitely feel it. My skin feels very tight and like stressed. I do have a few breakouts right now. Biggest one being this little guy. I still have a similar experience as last week and the week before, where like when I do get a breakout, if it like flakes, it feels very raw and painful. That's kind of the only way I can describe it. The biggest change between last week and this week has been that my skin is kind of like expelling the sebaceous filaments, is I think what they're called. They're those things that like you kind of mistake for like pores or blackheads on your nose. And it did start on my nose. I noticed like a couple of days ago that my nose was very bumpy and those were becoming very prominent. Like, and I don't know how to be, like they just kind of started falling out. I did, you know, help the process along, and I shouldn't have done that, but I did. Because I have squeezed those out of my face before, I know what they usually look and feel like, and I will say that these were much like harder. It was almost like I was like pushing little like rocks out of my skin, which sounds painful. It wasn't at all. It was just very strange and kind of left like open holes in my nose. That process has now also been happening on my chest, which is very red because of it. Like, I don't know why it's so red, but that's been happening on my chest as well as like my back and the back of my neck-ish, like my upper back. And it's even been happening like on my hand a little bit. And it just kind of feels like tiny little bumps. But yeah, it's not painful. I'll admit, like, even though it doesn't super show up on camera, it does look kind of gross to me in person, like looking down at it. But if the process happening on my chest is like anything like the speed of which it happened on my nose, like it's still happening on my nose, but like pretty quickly it's been going away. So I'm not super worried about that. And while it is gross, like I'll admit, it's kind of satisfying. But other than that, nothing really remarkable has happened this week. I have one more week of treatment before I see my doctor again and start my next round of treatment. Granted, my doctor's appointments are just phone appointments, so I don't know like how she's gonna assess how I'm doing other than just like verbal communication. But I do have to send her every month a selfie with a negative pregnancy test. So I guess she'll get a look at my skin during that. Also, just for like more transparency's sake, I am wearing makeup today in this video. However, I put it on at about 11:30 a.m. and it's currently 10:30 p.m. So the makeup has been on for 11 hours, so there's not much of it left other than like mascara and eyeliner. So this is pretty much what my face looks like. But that's pretty much all I got for you this week. I will check in with you next week, and that will be when you see the video. All right, see you next week. Happy 1 month, Accutane. This has been quite an interesting month. Yesterday, I had my 1 month follow-up appointment with my dermatologist. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Accutane process, you do have to have monthly appointments with your doctor who prescribed it. Now, my appointment was literally less than 15 minutes long. It was just over the phone, like it's not a huge appointment, but they do need to check in with you every month. Honestly, I kind of want to include the selfies that I have to send to my doctor in these videos just because I think they're funny. I have set kind of a personal goal of making them just like a little bit weirder every month, without them getting so weird to the point that she's like, what on earth are you doing? What on earth are you doing? I am wearing makeup today because I had other filming that I had to do before I filmed this, and I didn't want to put it on and then take it off and then put it back on. But realistically, like when I wear makeup, I don't tend to wear a lot of face makeup. So I'm kind of checking in the viewfinder to see what you can see. Most of the acne you can see is kind of concentrated on this side of my face right now. I have one or two like big guys. These are both like more cyst-like pimples. And then there's one big guy over here. These two, because they're cysts, haven't popped. They're just kind of existing. This one, I have ignored any sense of impulse control and have picked at regularly. Don't do that. Don't be like me. My side effects are still pretty much the same as they were last week, just kind of having to make sure that I stay on top of moisturizing and chapstick and just taking care of my skin, because when I do pick at things, they are raw as all hell. I think last week I had mentioned that I was losing sebaceous filaments, and I said that it was happening in my hands, but it's actually just dry, scaly skin on my hands. It was happening on my chest, back, and nose, but this is just dryness. In addition to my hands being kind of dry and scaly, they also are just cracking. I just have lots of little cuts all over my fingers that I don't know how they got there. They just kind of did. That's something I've been trying to be a little bit more on top of this week, is my body moisturizing routine, especially with my hands, due to the state that the world has been in for the last 1.5 years. I have been washing my hands a lot more frequently, so they were already more dry, and now they're extra dry. So that's just something I need to be more conscious of and make sure that I am consistently keeping up with that. In terms of side effects, I told my dermatologist yesterday pretty much everything that I've been telling you, and she said that all of it's normal, which I didn't expect her not to. She said that all of those are good signs. It sounds like my body is responding well to the medication, even though I am not having a good time. None of the side effects were any sort of surprise to her, and for the next month, she has upped my dosage from 40 milligrams to 60 milligrams. This means I'm going to be taking 40 milligrams in the morning and 20 at night, every day. Something else that I learned this week was that Accutane stays in your system for 30 days after your last dose. So when my dermatologist scheduled our follow-up appointment, it's actually more than 30 days after this one. And I was like, girl, I'm gonna be without medication for a couple of days then. Is that a problem? And she was like, no. So if you ever notice that, it's nothing to worry about, totally normal. I asked her why she thought we needed to up my dosage, especially if I'm responding to it well. And I saw online that 60 is a fairly high dose, and while I do have very persistent acne, it isn't full face cysts. So I was kind of curious, and her answer was basically just you're responding well to it. That's kind of the upper end for people of your age and weight, and we're upping the dose just to ensure that we kick this stuff out of your body for good. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Sure. Now that we're at the end of the first month, I can still with 100% certainty say that if my acne is fully gone or even mostly gone by the end of this treatment, it will 100% have been worth it. I do wish that I had started this earlier, but also it might be for the best that I didn't. I know a lot of people who started Accutane at a much younger age than me, and I'm only 23, but personally, I think that if I had had to experience the purging stage and the raw skin and the dryness while also growing up and still kind of coming into myself, I think it would have been a lot harder on my self-esteem and mental health than it is now. Don't get me wrong, during the purging stage, I really didn't want to go out of the house. I didn't want to be seen. Putting makeup on hurt and also didn't really cover anything. And I was pretty upset, but I'm just imagining going through that same thing at 17, and that would have been a lot harder. I am really grateful and glad that everything just kind of worked out, that I was able to start Accutane at a time that I am pretty solid and confident in who I am, because I think that's making this process easier. My skin has always been one of my biggest insecurities, and I am very glad to be ridding myself, hopefully, of acne, but I also am now at a point in my life that I know that my skin doesn't define me. And a few years ago, honestly, even a few months ago, I don't know if I could have said the same. So that's all I got for this week, and therefore all I've got for this month. I'll still be filming weekly updates, but as of right now, I'm gonna continue posting them monthly. So that means that next month you'll get a 4-week update rather than a 3-week update like this one, because my week 1 update was its own big video. Let me know down in the comments if you think that a weekly update would be better, or if you like the idea of a monthly update. Thanks so much for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye!